Liberty Nation with Tim Donner.
Say what? Say what? Say what? One more time.
We commence the proceedings with our signature segment, Say What, where we roll out a virtual assembly line of wacky, astonishing, damnable, and ultimately revealing things uttered by politicians and the chattering class. And it's becoming more crystal clear by the day that reopening the country has become a partisan issue. Incredible as that is to believe in a country where normal people want to go back to work in their normal lives as quickly as possible, where they've had enough of fear and trembling. But while President Trump and most Republican governors are pushing hard to end the lockdowns expeditiously, Democrats, or most of them, are pushing for the opposite, keeping things closed at least until, let's take a wild guess here, say, Election Day? And the attitude of the leftist elites about reopening was revealed in breathtaking fashion, by Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi, leader of the Democrats, expressing support for another 3 months of lockdown in California's massive Los Angeles County.
Of course, I agree with the decisions of the people on the ground in their particular venue and location, because, again, as Dr. Fauci said earlier, and I wish the president would listen to him or hear him even, that you just cannot think that this is pretend it went away and go out there. So, yes, it's inconvenient.
Inconvenient? Inconvenient to lose your job through no fault of your own, have trouble feeding your family, paying your bills, making rent, worrying all the livelong day. And Nancy Pelosi calls another 3 months of that inconvenient. Modern-day Marie Antoinette. Let them eat cake. Meanwhile, Pelosi's Senate soulmate, Chuck Schumer, was making political hay out of this public health crisis that wasn't caused by anyone, trying to tie Trump and his colleagues to the most infamous president in American history.
The Republican Party right now, from Donald Trump to Mitch McConnell, is sort of like Herbert Hoover. When the stock market crashed, Herbert Hoover said, we don't need to do anything, let the private sector work this out. And that caused, lengthened, and deepened the Great Depression. Let us hope that the public need and the public pressure will get the Republicans to understand what we need to do.
And that would be, wait for it, no, don't. Throw trillions more taxpayer money at the problem, because what the heck? We're so far gone with our national debt now approaching $30 trillion. What's a few trillion more? Let our kids and grandkids pay the tab. But in a way, talk of COVID was something of a relief for the Democrats and their sycophants in the elite media, because it meant they didn't have to talk as much as they ordinarily would about the latest Joe Biden problem, that he, along with almost 36 other high Obama officials, requested an unmasking of General Michael Flynn for reasons as yet unexplained, after Flynn saw charges against him mercifully dropped by the Justice Department this week. But Biden did go on Good Morning America and pulled his Sergeant Schultz act, I knew nothing, and actually can't even remember the question he was asked.
I know nothing about those moves to investigate Michael Flynn.
I do want to press that. You say you didn't know anything about it, but you were reported to be at a January 5th, 2017 meeting where you and the president were briefed on the FBI's plan to question Michael Flynn over those conversations he had with the Russian ambassador Kislyak.
Now, I thought you asked me whether or not I had anything to do with him being prosecuted.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I was aware that they asked for an investigation, but that's all I know about it.
But if you thought that was lame, listen to the person sent out to speak for the Democratic National Committee, whose job it is to spin the news to her party's advantage. And this was the best they could come up with. Xochitl Hinojosa, Democrats' Director of Communications, explaining away Biden's interest in unmasking Flynn and trying to change the subject of the old debunked refrain of collusion under the persistent questioning of Bill Hemmer of Fox News.
is something that you are just looking to see more intelligent. It is nothing that is scandalous in any way. But frankly, this is going to backfire on Republicans because it just showed how serious Flynn was and his conversations with the Russians.
Is that a crime to talk to other countries during that period? Is
well,
that against
I think
the law?
that whenever you are trying to interfere in an election or in any way try to go against the United States, I think that, that is something that is.
The answer there was a suggestion that there was collusion. There's been no proof of that. Where's yours?
You continue to see this Justice Department and specifically, Bill Barr trying to cover up for the president generally.
One more time. Where's the proof about collusion, Sochi?
Well, I leave that to the investigators. I encourage you to look at all of the work that Democrats have done in the House to continue to show the cover up by Donald Trump.
She is covering up by alleging a cover up by Trump. See how that works? It's called projection. Deflect onto your enemies that which you are guilty of yourself. And here comes this week's Exhibit A in projection. In the wake of revelations that senior officials going right up to the president himself, that's Obama, were commanding wiretapping on the incoming head of the National Security Council, former Attorney General Eric Holder had the chutzpah to go on MSNBC and say that Flynn's exoneration represents exactly what his man Obama and his cohorts did.
My concern is that we move from the defensive to the offensive, that they will use the power of the Justice Department, the power of the criminal justice system to go after people who are perceived as enemies of this president. That is something that I say reluctantly, but I think based on the record that we have seen, they are up to doing that, to use the system in that way, which would be unprecedented.
Unprecedented when we now know that the Obama Justice Department, headed by Holder for years, was doing exactly that themselves. This is how truth no longer matters to the left. It's all narrative, false narrative, pinning Republicans with the very sins they have committed so egregiously and audaciously themselves. But you know one thing for absolute certain, and that is that President Trump will not stop talking about this. And he put this week's revelations into his own political context.
It was the greatest political crime in the history of our country. If I were a Democrat instead of a Republican, I think everybody would have been in jail a long time ago. This was all Obama. This was all Biden. These people were corrupt. The whole thing was corrupt, and we caught them.
And Trump is getting backstopped in this by prominent members of the House and Senate, including Devin Nunes, Rand Paul, and Lindsey Graham.
General Flynn is really just the tip of the iceberg. What it appears to me like what they were doing is a lot of them went wild after Trump won. They got poisoned with this Russia hoax.
If Vice President Biden and the president's inner circle of advisors were all listening to a senior Trump administration advisor's private phone conversation, this would amount to a serious abuse of power.
This is an outrage. It's at least unethical, and we're going to get to the bottom of it. They had no business listening to anything General Flynn was saying about Trump policy.
And yet they made it their business. Folks, we have no previous case in American history of a president and his administration wiretapping first his political enemy and then successor in the White House. If that doesn't scare the bejesus out of the American people, one wonders what it would take. And we'll be back to reset the economic landscape across the land as we attempt a return to normalcy.